think it's about 4:30, so it's about time to start. My name is Jennifer Tsuruda, and I am an assistant professor in entomology and plant pathology here at UT Knoxville. I started about February of 2019. I am the apiculture specialist, meaning that I go around the state and I educate beekeepers as well as other stakeholders about the importance of pollinators and how to manage them. So when I talk about other stakeholders, it's oftentimes talking about how to best promote pollinators in different types of landscapes. So whether that be agricultural landscapes where they need pollinators for the production of fruits and vegetables or even seeds, or even with homeowners that are keeping bees as a hobby or have a neighboring bee colony that may be causing a little bit of difficulties in trying to work through those challenges. My background, I'm unfortunately not a UT alum. I went to UC Davis for many years long ago. I'm originally from California. After California, I went to Purdue University and I did a postdoctorate there. And then I went on to Clemson University and was their apiculture specialist for South Carolina for about 5 years before I moved here. My interest in insects has been relatively long. I was always the kid that would be out in the neighboring fields and collecting all kinds of insects. My parents were good sports about it. My grandmother, not so much. She would oftentimes tell me that she needed to put the insects that I collected out in the garage so they could get some fresh air. But it's been a long and fun journey over time. After my years of beekeeping, I'm finding more and more the importance of reaching out to beyond beekeepers about the importance of pollinators. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, is not only pollinators, but how to support them and some of the initiatives that UTK is involved in to try to promote and help healthy pollinators across the landscape, whether it be in agriculture or on a campus in an urban area or in people's backyard apiaries, we call them. I guess one thing that I'll point out too is if you have questions, you can go ahead and put them, you can add them in and we'll try to address them either during or at the end. I'm hoping we're not going to have a storm come through. If we do, I'll try to sneak into the building next door, and hopefully it won't take too long to do that transportation. But I'm really happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to meeting so many new to me alums from UT. This is a great university, and I'm actually part of the Agricultural Institute, so on the other side of the bridge from the East Campus. If you aren't familiar, we have an extension program that reaches across all of the counties in the entire state. So we have 95 county offices where we have agents that are working in agriculture and natural resources, as well as 4-H and consumer and home resources as well. We have a lot of great outreach to the communities. That's one of the great things about UT, is that we're way beyond Knoxville. We're all across the state. We also on the Ag Campus have the AgResearch group, and they're awesome too. And so one of the things I'll point out towards the end is the importance of our field days and how we reach out to the public and our stakeholders as well. So we have a couple of those coming up that I'll be involved in that I can tell you a little bit more about. Right now I'm sitting within the UT Gardens, the edge of the UT Gardens. I think they have an activity tonight, so I'm not sure if it's going to start getting busy. If it does, I'll go ahead and put my mask on. But right now it's really calm. It's a little bit overcast, but that actually makes it rather nice for me. Again, from California, used to dry heat, not humidity. But this is a great place to keep bees. We've had some high losses in the recent years, but we're really working on managing some of those problems. One of the main things being parasitic varroa mites, which we may or may not see in this observation hive behind me, but we'll definitely be able to point out some interesting biology there. So I guess the first thing I'll point out is the importance of pollinators. And oftentimes we realize how important they are for some of our tasty snacks and treats that we really like, some of these nice healthy treats like almonds. So you may not realize that all of the almonds in the United States are grown in California. So they produce 100% of the United States almonds. It's a huge commodity. It's really important for the California economy as well as the US economy, and it's a big part of commercial beekeeping. So beekeepers move their bees all across the United States. And I have a map to show you that. Hopefully you can see that without too much glare. So depending on the crop, some of them are only grown in certain areas. And so, oh, sorry, I guess this is backwards. Maybe it's not backwards for you. I don't know, sorry. Use the other side of your brain if it is backwards. You can see that there are certain crops that are only grown in certain parts of the United States. So to get the effective pollination that we need, we have to actually move those honeybee colonies around. And that is one advantage of honeybees. So I will point out that we have we have thousands of species of bees, and it's wonderful that we have the diversity of bees that we have across the world, but also in the United States. Honeybees are one species and they are not native. Sometimes they get a bad rap for that, but I am a promoter of all bees and all types of beneficial insects and pollinators. And one thing I think that is an important part of the conversation that oftentimes gets left out is the crops that we grow are oftentimes not native. And so that's why bringing in a general pollinator that is also a generalist and will visit many types of plants can be advantageous to get the yields that we want. So I have another little map here from a scientific publication that came out fairly recently showing where our major food crops, where they're actually native to, where the origins are. And so what you can see up here in North America, there aren't that, well, any one of these countries alone, or even continents, doesn't have that many types of food crops that are native to their area. And so we've brought in crops from other countries and regions that we can grow here, but the pollinators that would be in those native areas aren't here. So that's one advantage for us to try to maintain a diversity of pollinators, even if some of them are not native. They're still really effective pollinators. And I pointed out the almonds before, but another really important food that needs pollinators are berries. So things like blueberries, there are actually specialist bees, native bees, like a southeastern blueberry bee that specializes on blueberries, and so they pollinate these plants more effectively than honeybees. But there's actually been some research out of North Carolina State University that shows having a diversity of bees, not just the southeastern blueberry bee, not just the honeybee, but having many types of bees in the area where you have blueberry plants will actually increase your production, because the different types of bees work in different ways at different times of the day, in different weather conditions. With honeybees, one nice thing is you can move, we can transport them around, and you can put a box of 50,000 bees in a location that may not have been getting effective pollination. So it's one way that's one of the advantages of honeybees, is that we can move them around and control them. Whereas a lot of the native bees are actually ground nesting bees, and so it's really hard to manage them, let alone move them around. So we can make effort to try and attract them into areas, and that's fantastic, and we encourage that. But it does take some time and investment before you actually start reaching high populations in your areas. So it's a little bit difficult, but we definitely want to pursue diversity in pollinators and beneficial insects across the lands. One thing I'll point out is that, actually I have it facing the wrong way, is also if you want to have some diverse bees in your yard, you really want to try to plant diverse forage for those bees. So these are all fairly similar flowers, but you can also see that there are many different colors. There are some different shapes in here. I have some basil added in here, really small, tiny flowers in there. So a lot of the really small native bees, we're foraging on that today. Smells really great. But you can see all these Asteraceae, these like sunflowers. This teddy bear sunflower in the middle is like one of my favorites. It just looks so fuzzy and cute. But also these other sunflowers are really popular with the bees right now. But one other thing I'll point out is that as important as it is for us to have all of these different plants out in the landscape, we also need to have more research on these plants to try to figure out which ones are not only attractive to the bees, but which ones are actually nutritious for the bees. And Dr. Laura Russo, also at UTK, is working on some of that in terms of native bees. So it's a really great effort, and we need some more of this happening with all of the different bee species to figure out what are the best plants for them nutritionally and that they're going to want to go to. So I always joke that, you know, if you just looked at the foods that I was attracted to and said, oh, that's what we should feed Jennifer, that's probably not going to be the best nutritious diet for me. So we have to find the things that are going to be edible, or things that the bees will actually eat, but that are actually going to also be good for them. So there is a lot of great research going on in that area, but there can never be enough. And so I guess that also leads into this idea that when people sometimes you'll hear people talk about native bees versus non-native bees and out competing for resources. I think the more simpler solution in terms of, or what we can do right now, is to plant more flowers for all of the bees so they can coexist a little bit better, or have less competition between them. And so one thing that our campus is working on here is we are now a certified bee campus, meaning that we're putting in habitat across campus specifically for pollinators. So our first planting, we actually have I should point out first, this is a group effort. We have a Bee Campus USA, or UT Bee Campus committee, and we have folks from all over campus, UT Gardens, Office of Sustainability, gosh, sorry, there's a helicopter, Landscape Services, and this was actually, I was originally contacted by Sam Adams, the arborist at UT, and we've all worked together to try to promote. The med school is very nearby, so hopefully that's a very important ride over there. We have a lot of different people from different aspects of campus that are really all helping to contribute to making this a successful bee campus. We also have faculty, staff, and students involved. So part of our objectives is to not only create these habitats across campus, but to also encourage and create opportunities for learning. So whether that be students or adults. So my work through Extension is mostly with adults, not on campus, but there are opportunities as well for students on campus. So through the Office of Sustainability, we have folks over at the Grow Lab that are doing some awesome workshops for students related to pollinators. So we're all working together to really try to promote this idea that you can create pollinator habitat and you can support pollinators in any kind of environment. It doesn't have to be out on the farm. You can do it in these urban areas, even on a university campus. So it's a great effort. We were going to have a big kickoff in April, but that got shut down. So maybe you saw some of the videos that we put online instead. Hopefully next year we'll be able to do something in person, but we'll also have some other workshops, I'm sure, coming up in the future. I'm hoping to do a big pollinator event next June, provided that we can do it safely, or if not, then we'll do more virtual presentations, which is what most of our field days have been turned into now too. And a lot of people have really preferred that opportunity. You don't have to travel, you can enjoy the comfort and air conditioning of your home, and you can watch it later on. So that's kind of one nice thing. And for us as presenters, it also offers us an opportunity to include some nice videos, some nice images of different things happening at different times of the year, and not just at one specific time. So it's been a really great opportunity, and I encourage you all to take advantage of those. I'm going to set this aside for now. One other thing I'll point out with these honeybees. So I mentioned that these are not native to the United States or North America, but we imported them, and they are honeybees for a reason. They do produce an excess of honey. We've also bred them to produce an excess of honey. And one thing I'll show you here are these different types of honey. I'm not sure how well you can see them, but these are coming from different floral resources, meaning different types of flowers. So we call these honey varietals. So up here we have Tupelo honey. It's really light in color, almost clear. This is a prized honey. One reason is because it does not crystallize. And the crystallization of honey, I want everyone to realize that crystallized honey, there's nothing wrong with it at all. It's just a natural process that happens with honey. There are different sugars within flower nectar, and when you have a high proportion of glucose, that can separate out, and that's what causes the crystallization. There's nothing wrong with it. If you don't like it crystallized, you can heat up your honey jar in warm water. Don't just microwave it. Oftentimes you'll get a burnt flavor, and you can actually affect some of the enzymes and nutritional or medicinal qualities about your honey as well. So warm water, just to make sure that you dissolve those crystals, and it'll stay good forever. So that's one great thing about honey. It'll last you through pandemics. Here we have some wildflower honey. So this varies a lot in color, year by year, location by location, because wildflower honey is just honey from whatever was flowering across the season. We don't really know what. So one thing I didn't point out, I should have started out with, is when you talk about a varietal like Tupelo honey, how do you know that it's just Tupelo flowers? So we're oftentimes, as beekeepers, moving our bees into areas where, when and where the specific type of plant is blooming, and where that's the primary plant that's blooming. So Tupelo is growing out in like areas of Florida is the main area where our beekeepers are going to make this honey. And that's the primary resource that the bees are visiting on. And we'll collect the honey right after we leave the bees out in that area. We don't move them back to another location and let them mix honey or mix nectar from another area in. That's how we get these varietals. Here we have orange honey. It's only like halfway filled. I guess it was a popular one the last time I did a tasting. A lot of people really like orange blossom honey because they grew up on it. This is one that you typically get at the grocery store. You usually get clover or orange blossom. Really popular. It's a nice medium amber color. Decent flavors. Everyone has their own preference. I tend to like blueberry and blackberry and raspberry the best, but a lot of people like orange. It's a great honey. I don't dislike any honeys, but buckwheat is not my favorite for sure. You can see how dark this is. I actually grow a lot of buckwheat for my bees. It's a good cover crop, so we can use these in farming systems as a weed preventative measure, as green manure. We have some growing in the UT gardens I was just looking at yesterday. The bees absolutely love it. The nectar is rather dark. The honey is obviously really dark. It crystallizes pretty easily. It's more like molasses, so it even has a very different aroma than what people think of traditionally as honey. So this one, some people love it, some people hate it, some people are in the middle. I don't hate it, but I'm definitely between hating it and thinking it's okay. It's just not one of my favorites. But if you love it, more power to you. I'm glad there are people who love it because my bees love to go out and collect it. So this is a great honey as well. One thing I didn't mention is how bees make honey. So we have bees and they go out and forage on flowers, and if it weren't so cloudy, I'm not sure, we might be able to go out a little bit later and take a look at some of the flowers to see if there are bees on them. But bees are visiting these flowers, they're sucking up the nectar from the flowers. If you want to see videos of this, hopefully you can check out some of the Bee Campus videos that we've put out on social media. You can see some of the bees foraging on flowers. They have a little tongue that works like a straw, and they'll suck up the nectar, and they store it in what's called a honey stomach. So it's not their true stomach, it's just a little storage sac, so that when they come back to the colony, another worker bee will then unload them and suck that nectar out, and then they'll find a cell within the colony to put it, and then after that they'll start adding enzymes to it to break down those sugars. Remember I mentioned that there are different types of sugars. They'll break down the complex sugars into simple sugars, and then they will evaporate the water out of it, and then once it gets to a highly concentrated level, then they'll cap it off with wax. And I'll show you a close-up in just a second of what that looks like. This whole top frame up here is all honey or ripening honey. So that is how the honey process is made. So I don't want anyone to get confused and think that when the bees visit the flowers that they're just bringing back honey. I wish it was, I would be rich in honey if that were the case. They're actually bringing back nectar, which is much lower concentration of sugar. And so they're having to concentrate that down to actually produce honey. So this is one reason why honey costs a little bit. It costs more than sugar water would cost, and it's a great commodity. But it's also important to realize how much work goes into keeping bees alive to harvest honey. We typically recommend beekeepers only collect honey off of a second-year colony and let all the bees have it the first year when you're establishing a colony. So that means keeping your bees alive for at least 2 years before you can harvest honey off of them. So there's a lot of investment that goes into getting even just the smallest little jar of honey out there. And one thing I'll point out is that if you really want to try and taste some really good honey, get to know one of your local beekeepers. We have almost 50 local beekeeping associations across the state. You can go to tnbeekeepers.org if you want to find your local association and learn more. There are local clubs that meet monthly. Most of them are virtual right now, but they're a great opportunity to learn more about the beekeeping community in your region. So that's a great way to support beekeepers. And I will point out that honey is a great commodity, but it's also not the way that beekeepers, that most beekeepers make, well, I shouldn't say most, many beekeepers make their money. So the commercial beekeepers are doing that migratory beekeeping and moving their bees around the country for pollination services. There's more of a financial market for pollination services, but for that you must have many colonies. So you're a larger scale beekeeper. But there's nothing wrong with having a few backyard hives and keeping them around just for fun or just for a little bit of excess honey. It's a fabulous, fun hobby. But one thing I will point out is that education is really key. This is not like getting a pet dog or a cat. When they get sick, their symptoms are not as easy to identify as a cat or a dog. They don't get goopy eyes, they don't sneeze, so it's a lot harder for us to identify those problems. And they can, because they are flying around, they can spread disease from one beekeeper's apiary to another beekeeper's apiary nearby. So it's really important that we get beekeepers to follow best management practices so that we don't have spread of disease across the state or even within a county or a region. I guess one thing now I'll show you, first of all, is this honeycomb. So this is a frame, an empty comb. We usually give them foundation, which is just a sheet of plastic or wax that has the hexagonal shape on it, but it's pretty much flat. And then we call it draw out, or they build the comb. So they chew on the wax, or they'll actually make wax themselves. They have little glands on their abdomen. When they consume a lot of sugar, they'll make a little wax pellet, and then they'll chew on that wax pellet to make it soft, and then they'll build this comb from that foundation. And one thing you can't really tell on here is that these cells are slightly angled upwards, so that when they're carrying or when they're holding nectar and honey, it doesn't drip out of the frame, so it stays within here. I guess now I'll show you a close-up of these bees. They're much more exciting to look at, so pardon me while I try and adjust things here. Okay, so I'm going to try to flip the camera around. All right. Oh, sorry, I'll get my fingers out of the way. Okay, so hopefully you can see all these bees up here. And this is what I mentioned before. This is that honey that's now capped off in wax. So we have bred bees to produce excess honey for us, but really they're keeping this is their pantry, right? So this is for them to consume during times of the year when they don't have access to flowers. So that may be wintertime, that could be one of these bad storms that come through where the bees can't actually go out and access flowers. Down here you can see these cells that are still open. You can see them glistening with that, that they're ripening into honey down there. That's good stuff. Let's see, if we come down here, this frame, this is what we call the brood frame. So there are developing bees on here, but what you see along this outside, this is also honey. But down here is where there are developing bees. Some of these they're covered with brown. Let's see if you can see that, those cappings. Those are where bees are pupating. So bees' developmental cycle is they start out with an egg, and then it hatches into a little larva, which looks like a tiny grub, and it's hard to see. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get the resolution or the ability to see it in these cells. But if you look at the very bottom of those cells, you might be able to see some glistening little larvae that are sitting on brood food, which is kind of like a diluted royal jelly. It just looks milky and goopy. And then once they get of age, to an older age where they become a pre-pupa, they get capped off, and then that's where they turn into a pre-pupa, and then they pupate, and that's basically like when a butterfly has a chrysalis, that's that same stage, and then they'll emerge out as an adult bee. And I'm not sure, I've tried to pick a frame that had adult bees emerging, but I'm not sure. We may not see any on this side. We might have to flip to the other side. But I can tell you right now that this bee right here, of course she's gonna go in the cell, she's shy. Or actually, this one over here, that's a newly emerged bee, as opposed to this bee over here, which is older. And you can see, I mean, not only, there shouldn't be much of a size difference, but because they have exoskeletons, and so they don't really grow, but they can expand because there are membranes in between their exoskeleton scales that allow them to expand a little bit. But she's not as golden, but that's okay. Her color is a little bit different. She's a little bit more silky looking. Her thorax here, she's a head, a thorax, and then an abdomen. And her thorax is actually where her wings and her legs are attached. And it's a little bit slick right now because she just came out of the cell, so her fuzz hasn't had time to fluff up yet. Over time, she will get fluffier. I don't see any bees on this frame that are like that, but we're gonna walk over to the back side and see, because I know I put my queen in here for you guys to see, because everyone always asks, where's the queen bee, right? So let's see if we can find her in here. So we mark our queens with a paint dot or a tag, and in this colony she actually has a tag, and it's a green tag with a number on it. So I know exactly which queen is in this colony, and she might be shy too. You know, normally they would be in the dark, so this is all very distracting for them. All this sunlight is a bit much, and I'm going to put them back in the colony as soon as okay, hopefully we're still connected. Sometimes we'll have other bees climbing on top and we'll miss her, but I think she might be hanging out along these cracks. Sorry, our connection is getting off. It seemed like it was better on this side, so we'll stay on this side. But I promise you there is a queen in this colony, and she's gonna go back into the colony later on. So I guess I'll start finishing up here. I know what I can tell you about. I can tell you really quickly about male bees. So these are all female bees. These are worker bees. So anytime you see a honeybee out on a flower, it's always a female bee. Male bees are called drones. They are not called worker bees. Sorry, I think the storm is interfering. Drones are really only around for reproductive purposes when there's a new queen in other colonies to mate with. The queen that's in this colony has already been mated when she was really young, and she's able to store the sperm from all of her matings, and she's able to keep it alive for years. So when they produce daughter queens that need to get mated, that's when they start producing males around in the season. Usually it's in spring and early summer. And so this colony didn't have any, but I picked one out from another colony. Let's see if I can show you him. Oops, I don't know if it can focus in on him. But he's really handsome, I promise you. It's hard to focus in. He's a lot larger than the other bees, as you can see here. He has huge eyes too, so when they mate in flight. So that's one reason he has these huge eyes, is he wants to beat out all those other males to mate with that queen. And also one nice thing is, you may be wondering, like, wow, she's carrying that bee. So one really interesting thing about male bees is that they can't sting. So don't think I'm super brave right now. I'll sometimes carry worker bees, but this male bee, he can't sting me at all. I'd put him on my face, but I really would rather not. I don't want to put him through that. But he can't sting, very cute, great flyer, but really not around for much other than reproduction. So this time of year, they actually start getting kicked out of the colony because most of the virgin queens have already been mated. So the workers don't want to take care of them through the winter. So they oftentimes are getting kicked out this time of year. And so they'll end up kind of starving to death. Ooh, I think I see an emerging bee coming out. So it's gonna take a while. So I don't think we're gonna sit here the whole time and watch her. You're just gonna have to, this will be like April the giraffe, where it took months and months. But right here, if you can see that, someone likes to have the attention here, but underneath that cell, you can see one that is trying to chew her way out. And maybe maybe her sister's helping her, but hopefully you can see that one chewing its way out. So today's gonna be her birthday. It's very exciting. So on average, the queen is gonna be laying about 1,500 eggs a day. And so another thing I didn't mention is that these worker bees help raise their little sisters. So that queen lays all the eggs, and then once those hatch, it's actually these other worker bees that feed them, that produce the baby food, which we call brood food. and then that is what helps these, or that's the diet for these developing larvae in there. And then they take care of them. They do everything for them from that point on. So it's really a great family unit, and it's a great example to talk to kids about working together. But here you can hopefully see her now. That's her little face. She's chewing her way out. So cute, so exciting. I still love even when bees emerge. They're just so fascinating. And then some of these other cells, you may see these little rear ends sticking out. When you see the little rear end sticking out, that's because they're in there feeding one of their little sisters. So they're regurgitating that brood food into the colony. I was gonna see if we can find one that's actually close to emerging out, but it may just take a long, long time. But just promise me, it's very, I promise you, it's very, very interesting when they come out. And they are, oh, sorry, our Wi-Fi is a little bit stressful out here. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see any others emerging right now. We can check back on her a little bit later. But another thing is, typically, I don't have much on this frame, but you would typically see pollen, a strip of pollen around the brood. So we have the brood in the center, and then pollen, and then nectar and honey. This frame in particular just doesn't have any right now, but the other frames in the colony do. So there's typically about 50,000 bees, and I only took out maybe 1,500. So you're seeing a very small proportion of the colony. I guess one other last thing I'll try to advertise or mention is that another project that UT works on is that I keep some of my bees at the organic farm. And I don't even know if all of you realize that we have the East Tennessee Research and Education Center that has multiple locations across the eastern region. And one of them is here in Knoxville, and it's our organic farm. And we have a lot of great people out there working on research as well as production. And we have what's called the VSA, or the Vol Supported Agriculture. And so there are subscription baskets where you can actually get locally produced produce from the farm. You can get baskets. I forget how many weeks it is. You can Google it and look up VSA Organic Farm. Great opportunity to get local produce produced right at the farm and also support UT. And the nice advantage to it for me is that we're working really hard on trying to figure out which of these nice flowers can we plant that the bees are going to visit, but then also use those as cut flowers to provide for the basket. So when you're getting your bouquets from the VSA, some of the flowers may not be in top-notch condition, but that's because we let the bees forage on them for a little bit, because that's where they're getting their food resources. That's where they're getting their nectar and their pollen. So if you want some nice flowers, think about joining the VSA, but also because it's producing really great locally produced fruits and vegetables for you. And if you can't have your own home garden, that's the next best thing. Really great local produce. So I think I'm going to show you just a couple more resource pages, and then I'll see if anyone has any questions. Let's see. So we already did the maps of the different resources, or the different crops. One thing that fits in with the bee campus, but also just my job in general, is that I maintain the apiculture website, and we actually offer master beekeeping classes. And you don't have to be a master to take the beekeeping class. Even if you just want to learn about beekeeping, it's a class that you can take. Right now, because of the COVID situation, we don't have classes scheduled for this year, but there's information on my website about an online webinar series that I'm working on with some other universities, as well as other information about contacting your local extension office for any questions related to beekeeping or anything agriculturally related, or even youth related or home consumer issues as well. I can't remember if I mentioned it to start out with, but I'm in the Department of Entomology and Plant Pathology. So when you get to my website, you'll be able to go to the upper menu of my entire department. I'm really fortunate to work with a great group of students, staff, and faculty, all working on solving problems and promoting the good insects and plants, and trying to reduce the plant problems and pest insects that we have in our state. Great group of people. Please check it out. The other thing I'll point out is here's our Bee Campus website. So All of this is a little bit new because I'm fairly new here, and so I haven't had too much time to put everything up that I want to put up, but eventually we're going to have a lot more information and resources on these websites for you. But please check them out. And then I guess the last one I have to share is that I mentioned before that we have 95 extension offices across the state. So please check them out if you've never been to yours. Well, actually, I'm not sure, not all of them are open right now, but you can go ahead and go to the website, find out where your county office is, and find the contact so that when you do have issues in any type of agriculture, whether it's traditional or non-traditional, you can find great resources there. They can let you know about some of the programs they have going on. So like if you're interested in gardening, we have a great Master Gardener program as well. And okay, and I better finish up because my phone is not happy right now. And then the last one is UTIA. So this is the Ag Institute for the University of Tennessee. And so that is the big umbrella under which UT Extension, as well as Herbert College and AgResearch and the vet school are all under. So this is a wonderful website to go to that'll take you to all of those, guide you to all of those other sites as well. Lots of great information there. That's where you can find information about our field days. The Milan No-Till Field Day was July 23rd. I'm not sure if you can still access those presentations, but we have the Organic Crops Field Unit, or the Organic Crops Field Unit Field Day coming up October 1st, and that's going to be online. So that will be a great one for you to look out for. We have a promo video that I'll be putting up on my website soon, hopefully in the next week or so. So it'll be an opportunity for you guys to sit from home and learn about native bees from Dr. Russo, as well as honeybees and supporting pollinators from myself and other presenters. So if anyone has any questions, I appreciate all the nice comments that have been coming through. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, we can watch bees. Well, let's just check on that girl. She's getting closer. You can see almost her full face now. She's chewing her way out. So cute. And hopefully you'll understand and see that these aren't bees to be scared of, right? So a lot of people think, or if I tell them I work with bees, the first question is, do you get stung a lot? I get stung some, but I'm breaking into their houses all the time, so that's kind of to be expected. But also, I think it's more important to think about bees as the great pollinators that they are. And so that's one thing that we're really trying to work on, is promoting the importance of pollinators and making sure everyone values them on their day-to-day life. And I should have started out that there's an estimate, a research estimate, that 1 out of every 3 bites of food that you take has been affected by animal pollination or improved through animal pollination. So there's a day-to-day impact of these animal pollinators, especially insect pollinators like bees, on your life. So really appreciate them rather than be scared of them. Oh, here she's coming out. Do you see her? I hope you guys can see her and tell. Oh, she got a little shy. Hopefully you'll be able to watch her come out and tell everyone you saw an adult bee emerge out today. Well, she's snuck back in. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we'll wind this down in just a little bit. Well, let's see, maybe she's gonna do it. Oh, here she goes. She's past the point of no return now. Come on, come on. There she goes, and off to work. So I'll just end on one little girl asked me once. She found the queen in the colony, and then I explained to her that these were all her daughters, and she said, "So they're all princesses?" And sadly, I had to explain to her that no, they're actually workers. But it's a really great opportunity for kids to learn about insects as well, and how social structures work in societies, even if it is within insect colonies. So I'm going to end it right now, and I thank you guys so much for your time and interest. Please check out the websites if you want to learn more. Anything related to agriculture, check out the UTIA website, and I'm sure we can find answers for you if you have questions. Our motto is real life solutions. We're here to help you. Thank you guys so much, or thank you all so much.